Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're putting on our sports historian hats to look way past the fairy tale and forensically deconstruct the tactics, the controversies, and the hard data behind England's solitary World Cup victory. For a nation that considers itself the spiritual home of the modern codified game, that single star above the three lions' crest represents something incredibly profound. So we're going to treat the 1966 World Cup final not just as a legendary match, but as a historical collision. A collision of tactical revolution, geopolitical home advantage, and literally the most disputed goal in the history of the sport. In our historical dossier today, we're going to cover 5 key areas: the wingless wonders, data over sentiment, the home advantage suspicion, the forensics of the ghost goal, and finally, the long shadow of 1966. Let's jump right in. Part 1. The wingless wonders. We're looking at Alf Ramsey's tactical revolution. Okay, so to really understand 1966, you kind of have to throw out the traditional view of English football back then. The English game was largely defined by this 2-3-5 pyramid that relied super heavily on rapid wingers. But Sir Alf Ramsey? He was an autocratic tactical genius. He took one look at the heavy pitches of the era and realized that a compressed midfield was the future. So he built this fluid system that completely sacrificed those natural wingers. His system, famously dubbed the wingless wonders, wasn't necessarily designed to play the most beautiful football. Instead, it was ruthlessly balanced, highly organized, and it prioritized defensive structure and sheer physical exertion way above traditional flair. Now, to make the wingless wonders actually work, you needed a superhuman physical engine. Just look at the data here. Midfielder Alan Ball ran an estimated 11 kilometers during that final match. 11 kilometers. Compare that to the standard 6 kilometers that was typical for a player in the 1960s. And remember, they were doing this in an era with absolutely zero modern recovery science. No ice baths, no specialized diets, no sports medicine. This tactical shift required an entirely different breed of athletic endurance. Which brings us to part 2, data over sentiment. The human cost of Ramsey's system. See, during the group stages, England's all-time leading goal scorer, the pure mercurial genius Jimmy Greaves, suffered a pretty nasty gash to his shin. So Ramsey replaced him with West Ham's Geoff Hurst, a robust physical powerhouse. But here is where Ramsey absolutely shocked the nation. When Greaves fully recovered in time for the final, Ramsey chose to stick with Hurst. This was the ultimate triumph of data and tactical fit over pure sentiment. Hurst's physicality allowed him to contest those aerial duels that Greaves likely would have avoided, providing the knockdowns that fed the whole system. But man, this ruthless efficiency, it came with a profound emotional cost. Under the rules of the era, only the 11 players physically on the pitch at the final whistle actually received a winner's medal. So Jimmy Greaves, despite his immense contributions, did not get one on the day. Historical accounts note that Greaves later battled severe depression and alcoholism, and he often traced his heartbreak right back to this exact exclusion. It's a really stark reminder of the human element behind these grand tactical triumphs. Moving on to part 3, the home advantage suspicion, geopolitics, and favorable whistles. When we dive into the historical data, there is a pretty profound institutional tilt toward the host nation. I mean, England played every single one of their matches at Wembley Stadium. That meant zero travel fatigue, while their opponents were dragging themselves across the country. It meant playing on identical pitch dimensions every time, creating a permanent tactical comfort zone. On top of that, the semifinal against Portugal and the final against West Germany were both officiated by European referees. And believe me, that was a detail that did not go unnoticed by Latin American teams who were facing incredibly strict disciplinary actions. And this incident right here brilliantly illustrates where those suspicions reached their absolute boiling point. In the quarterfinal against Argentina, the Argentine captain Antonio Ratin was sent off by German referee Rudolf Kreitlin for violence of the tongue. The catch? Neither man spoke a word of the other's language. In protest, Ratin refused to leave the pitch for several minutes. When he eventually walked off, he dramatically sat right on the red carpet reserved for the Queen and wiped his hands on a British corner flag. This single incident completely fractured footballing relations and birthed decades of conspiracy theories regarding European institutional bias in football. All right, part 4. Forensics of the ghost goal, the geometry of Wembley. Let's treat the pitch like a historical crime scene for a second and track the exact sequence of events. We're in extra time. Alan Ball surges forward and squares the ball to Geoff Hurst. Hurst fires this blistering shot that cannons off the underside of the crossbar and bounces straight down. The Swiss referee Gottfried Dienst is totally unsighted. He rushes over to consult his linesman, Tofik Baharamov from Azerbaijan. With a single flag gesture and a split-second conviction, Baharamov awards the goal. England takes a 3-2 lead. Now, for decades, German fans have bitterly referred to this moment as the Wembley Tour, absolutely insisting the ball never crossed. It's the ultimate debate, right? So what we have to ask ourselves as modern observers is, what does actual forensic science and geometry tell us about that bounce? Well, when we look at side-by-side forensic computer models, the data reveals a pretty fractured truth. Back in the 1990s, Oxford University utilized computer modeling and concluded the ball was at least 6 centimeters away from crossing the line entirely. Fast forward to 2016, and a Sky Sports 3D virtual recreation using modern goal line technology parameters confirmed the exact same thing. Under current footballing laws, where the entirety of the ball must cross the entirety of the line, it absolutely did not cross. The linesman's perspective was almost certainly obscured by the dynamic of the bounce and the bulge of the netting. Finally, Part 5, The Long Shadow of 1966, The Echoes of Victory. As the final whistle approached and fans actually began spilling onto the pitch, Geoff Hurst broke away and scored his third goal, becoming the only man to ever score a hat-trick in a World Cup final. And accompanying this moment was BBC commentator Kenneth Wolstenholme's immortal line, "They think it's all over. It is now." That single sentence instantly mythologized the 1966 squad, transforming them from mere athletes into untouchable heroes in British culture. But, that mythologizing has a flip side. That single golden summer has transformed into a 58-year historical albatross. Literally every single generation of English players that has followed has been forced to operate under the crushing weight of those heroes of '66. And here's why this matters to us today. That solitary star on the English jersey represents a massive chasm between imperial expectation and modern reality. As this explainer shows, the 1966 win was a complex anomaly. It was this perfect storm of revolutionary 4-4-2 tactics, incredible home field logistical advantages, a linesman's disputed split-second call, and a manager ruthless enough to drop his biggest superstar. It set a standard so heavily dependent on the specific variables of the 1960s that it became almost impossible for modern teams plagued by decades of penalty shootout heartbreaks and tactical identity crises, to ever replicate. So ultimately, after reviewing the tactics, the forensics, and the deep emotional toll, we're left to wonder, did the inventors of modern football simply crown their ultimate legacy that day at Wembley? Or did they inadvertently build a flawless, untouchable monument that has haunted every generation since? It's a question that continues to define English football for sure. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found it as fascinating as I did.